Hey guys, David Doucette here, Architect Exam Prep. Just wanted to give you a heads up, let you know that the ARE podcast is sponsored by Architect Exam Prep, and that is myself and Eric. If you need any study materials, head over to our website, architectexamprep.com. You can check out our materials there. And also, if you need coaching, we offer that as well. Whether you need it for one division or you want to jump all the way in and join our Platinum Coaching Program, you'll find all the information at our website, architectexamprep.com. With that said, let's get into the podcast. ARE Podcast, episode number 59.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. ARE Podcast, where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello, and welcome back to the ARE Podcast, where we do a micro podcast, a podcast that is less than 15 minutes, which is always a challenge for both of us, but we've been pretty good at doing that lately. So with my co-host, Eric Corey Freed. Hello, Eric.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you.
And today's topic is a great one. And I guess we could call it Not Every Question is a PA Question, or maybe There Is No PA Question. I think that's the title, right? There is no PA question, which is a fantastic concept to understand. And most of you probably haven't heard it unless you've talked to one of our coaching candidates or maybe come to one of the webinars. So there is no PA question. So Eric, what exactly does that mean?
Well, you know, as you know, David, but the audience might not, I talk to a lot of candidates. I talk to about 5 candidates a day live on the phone, you know, actual human contact. And one of the common things that I'll hear is, you know, that you know, they took a test and they failed, and then they're calling to get essentially mini coaching or advice. And I'll ask them, well, why did you fail? And I'll often hear, man, it was BS. I was taking PA and I, you know, and I got a PPD question, or I was in the middle of PDD and I got a PA question, or I was in the middle of PCM and I got a PA, you know, whatever. That in their mind, there's certain types of questions that belong on certain exams, and for whatever reason, this throws people off, right? To be in the middle, you know, to be in the middle of PA and to get a question that they assume should be in PJM or some other division. And heard it so many times now that it's given me a lot of chance to think about what's wrong with that. And what's wrong with it is there's no such thing as a PA question. There's no such thing as a PJM question per se. Certainly there are topics that are assigned to certain categories, but all 6 exams are part of a continuum. They're all really, if you think about it, they're really just the same test. The only difference is the hat that you're wearing, right? What is the role you're playing as you're taking that test? So there is no such thing as a PA question.
Which, if you think about what NCARB is asking us, I mean, we're very close to becoming a licensed architect, a licensed professional. So if we step back and be honest with ourselves, we should be able to handle whatever is thrown our way, right? So whether we get what we think is a CE question in PA, it shouldn't be throwing us off. And as we've talked about before, 5.0 is a great exam. They're not siloed exams. They're very cohesive, and they should be thought of as a whole. And with, as you said, Eric, with topics, right? But yeah, we shouldn't be thrown off if we get any kind of construction administration question in PA or PPD or wherever we get it. We're about to be licensed architects. So we should be able to roll with it, and we should be able to think on our feet at this point.
I think what it comes down to is this notion of fairness. That's usually what I'll hear, is that it was unfair that NCARB would do this to me, as if there's a room in NCARB, and I've been to the NCARB office, so this is kind of funny to picture, but imagine there's a room in NCARB where they're like, let's see how we can pester Kevin today. And then they're mapping out, I know, let's throw him a PJM question in the middle of PA. That's, of course, that's not at all happening, but this level of fairness is kind of an interesting thing to recite, because I think it comes down to people are generally studying for these tests one at a time, and when they fail, they're looking for justification. They're looking for rationalization of why they failed. Oftentimes, they will blame everyone and everything except themselves. And so a very common theme that we'll see is that NCARB's out to get me, or NCARB is being unfair, and that becomes this kind of faceless boogeyman that people like to blame, as opposed to, well, maybe I just didn't study properly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think not everybody faces this, right? There are a lot of candidates who can successfully roll with it, and it's a process. And I think what's important about bringing this topic to you guys is if you're listening to us and some of what Erica or I are saying is resonating, that's time to take an inward look. Maybe you do kind of have that dialogue about NCARB in your head. Or I think the unfairness is a great one, because we've heard that a lot, and it's usually usually associated with a personality type or an attitude. Maybe attitude is a better way to categorize it, but unfairness goes along with the attitude of NCARB's out to get me. The exam's not fair. Why do I have to take 6 exams? Why do they make them so hard? All of that kind of stuff. So if you start to recognize yourself in that, then it's an opportunity to go inward a little bit and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and let's follow both trains of thought here. Train of thought number one is, it's unfair. You got a question that you deem should belong in a different test, but now it's showing up in your test. Well, either way, it's in the test, and you need to pass this test, and you're getting the same test as everybody else. So even if it is unfair in the galactic court of law, it's unfair, there's nothing you can do about it. Plus, it's one question, and it's worth 1 point. That's why it's not worth getting flustered over or getting your game thrown off by it. You get the question, do your best. If you feel like it's unfair because you're taking PCM and you got what you would deem as a PA question, you haven't studied PA yet. So what? You've been working in architecture for years. You went to architecture school. These questions are not they're not that tricky. In fact, they're surprisingly straightforward, to the point where just do your best. But again, at the end of the day, it's one question worth 1 point. There's 85 to 99 other questions for you to answer, to rack up points with. It's not that big of a deal.
Let's tie in expectations. I just thought of this, because I think this is tied to expectations. Like, we expect all the questions to specifically relate to PA. Not only that, I expect all questions to have been covered in the study material I had, right? And then when those expectations aren't met, then we get flustered. But I was just thinking, let's say you plan a road trip. The weather is sunny, right? You're on your road trip. Weather is sunny. There's no forecast of rain or anything. And then it storms, thunderstorms, whatever. You don't just stop your car and get out because now you're in the middle of a rainstorm and cry about the weather. You kind of just keep driving through it till you get back to that sunny weather again. So I think there is some sort of an analogy there, but I think the expectation is an important part tied into this.
Yeah, and there are reasonable expectations, and then there are what I would call unreasonable ones. A reasonable expectation to me would be, what, I'm paying NCARB and PSI $235 for this test. I expect it to work. I think that's a reasonable expectation. Unfortunately, it seems like anecdotally about 1 in 5 times it doesn't for most candidates. But that's a reasonable expectation. And I, in defense of NCARB, I will say that they do a very good job at handling those things. If your test, crashed or the computer didn't work, they're very typically pretty generous about another seat credit to make it up to you. But then there are these unreasonable expectations, like, why am I getting a PA question in PCM, or why am I getting a PPD question in the middle of CE? And that to me also indicates that you're looking at the test in the wrong way. And this is really at the heart of what I think we need to talk about today before we run out of time, is what do the tests really mean? How are they not in silos? And instead, what's a better way to look at those tests? I think that's really what I want to get into a little bit. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. We got 5 minutes left. So how do I need to look at these exams so I'm not thrown off, for example, when I get a question that I don't think should be there?
What's great about 5.0 and the big shift that NCARB had done with the test was it wasn't just in the format of the questions, in that now you're being asked judgment-based questions as opposed to kind of more memorization or rote questions. The big shift was by changing the test into phase-based approaches instead of topic-based approaches. They've also then aligned it to the AXP that you're doing to catalog your experience. They've also aligned it to AIA continuing education, which you will continue to do throughout your career. So there's this beautiful alignment that occurred that's really was much needed and very well done. The tests are not about topics. In the old days, under 4.0, for example, there was a test called site planning. Well, that was all about site planning. And yeah, if they asked me about something non-site planning related, I'd probably say, well, that's unfair. But these tests are about phases, right? PA is the programming phase. PPD is the schematic design phase. PDD is the construction document phase. CE is the construction administration phase. And then there's practice management and project management that could touch on all of those phases. So do not think of these tests as being siloed. Instead, you should think of them as essentially roles or part of a continuum of, almost like a microcosm of the entire architectural practice. In PA, you're wearing the hat of someone doing the programming. You haven't designed anything yet. You're looking for the problems to solve in the design that'll come later, but really you're actively architecturally programming. That means you're looking at the site, and you could expect on PA, if we're talking about leveling expectations, you could and should expect questions around foundations, questions around soil types, questions around, parking lots, and maybe even dimensions and ADA accessibility for those things. ADA is not a topic relegated to just PPD and PDD. So to me, you're wearing the hat of the programmer, and you haven't designed anything yet. So this tells you very clearly where you are in the process. And as you move into PPD, now you're in schematic design, right? You're putting it together. And then as you move into PDD, now you've got the design. It's approved, right? You even have outline specs. Now you have to, essentially prepare this in a way that so it can be bid and then built. But on all three of those tests, I should expect questions around structure and HVAC and soils and foundation types and materiality and relative costing, because they are all part of the game of going from programming to the end of CDs.
I was just thinking as you were describing the phases, which I think is a perfect way to think about this, just if we think about our day-to-day life in the office, right? Unless we want to be a CAD monkey who just has our blinders on like a horse and just kind of stays at our computer all day and just kind of that's all we do. If we want more than that, just think about your typical day. You can't go into the office and be like, oh, I'm just going to have a design development day today. And nobody's going to bother me, and nobody can ask me a contract administration question because today I'm just focused on design development, right? And you step back and think about it, it's kind of funny that we would even have that expectation, like I'm just going to do design development. No, you can't ask me about that project that's under construction. Ask me tomorrow, but not today. I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about it.
Well, I'm on. I have a firm-wide position, so I'm on 300 projects at any one time, and so I'll come into meetings and I'll say, "What is this project again? Where is it?" Because I'll get questions all over the place, and it's almost like I'm saying, "Which hat do I need to put on now?" Oh, this is CA, so I got to put on my CA hat. Great. Another way to think about it, and by the way, NCARB told us this when they first brought us into their office, and this is now 6 years ago, to show us 5.0 before it launched. They used this analogy, and I still use it to this day. That's really about scale, right? So PA is the programming scale. So you're at like 1/16 inch scale, site plan scale. PPD is schematic design. So now you're at, what's that, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch scale. You're at like floor plan, rough elevation scale. And then PDD is construction documents, right? Now you're at 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 3 inch detail scale. And thinking about these questions in terms of scale is a much better way to think about it than, man, this is BS. Why did I get a PA question in PPD? Like that whole mindset is is wrong and flawed, and also, frankly, I think contributes to the reason why you're failing.
Alrighty, we are just about out of time. I think on that again, if you sort of recognize yourselves, like what are two things I could do, Eric? If I'm listening to this, I'm like, God, they're sort of talking about me. What are two things that I can do today to start to shift my mindset?
Number one is whatever study material you use, hopefully you're using ours, but whatever material you use, as you go through it, look to see how it really sets you up for mindset. You're not there to memorize these things. Frankly, I don't think it would really help you if you did. You're there to understand these things. So when you're reading about the different soil types, it's not for you to memorize. It's for you to understand, well, why is clay an issue, right? Why is the water table even something that I have to even think about? And understanding the why for everything that you're reading while you're studying will switch you from that siloed base of topics that you're memorizing and into what we in the coaching program call, getting you to a growth mindset of one of understanding. So that way, anything they throw at you, you'll be able to just deal with and handle and answer. And then number two, I would say is if any of this is resonating with what we're saying, then start to think about maybe the test that you've taken. If you failed any, maybe this changes your retake philosophy. Maybe also rethink the order. We have a recommended order that we talk about on the website and advise to people in our coaching program. You don't have to put, but this order also kind of helps build on this idea of layering mindsets and getting you to the point where you're really seeing all 6 of these tests as part of a continuum.
Perfect. With that, thank you, Eric, for all of that. Number one, understanding, which I think that's the main takeaway for everything we talked about today. Understand what you're studying and learning to sort of apply it in those situations. That's going to wrap it up for today. My name is David Doucette and our co-host, Eric Corey Freed. We will see you guys on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the ARE Podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.
How do I stop that?